Hey guys, it's Pie. Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be watching a horror story animation again. Make sure to check out the last video. Credit goes to Dark Ace Animations. Make sure to subscribe. And let's get into it.
For a little bit of context, this story took place when I was 19 years old. I am currently 28 and no longer live in the state where this occurrence took place. When I was 19, I worked at a gas station convenience store that was only a few minutes away from my house. I was enrolled in community college, so most of my shifts were evening or overnights. For the most part, the job was normal and boring. We didn't really get many customers during the later hours, and if we did, they usually pumped their gas, paid with a credit card, and were on their way. I decided to pick up some extra hours during our holiday break from school. I figured I could use the extra cash to get Christmas presents for my family. I was scheduled to work 3 overnight shifts in a row, which was a pain because I always found it difficult to fall asleep when I got home in the morning. The first night of my overnight stretch was going by pretty uneventfully. I was biding my time by restocking the shelves and facing the products that had gaps in them. I remember I was bringing out a big box of cosmic brownies to fill our display case when I heard the bell ring and someone enter the store.
This video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Stick the graphics look and the
Oh, sorry about that.
2 or 3 a.m.,
Yeah,
so
skip
I
that
dropped what I was
because it's not
doing
my
and headed
sponsor.
behind the register to assist the person. I hadn't seen them yet, but yelled out good evening to see if I would get a response. I didn't hear anything, so I proceeded to move behind the register to see if the person needed
I'm pretty sure
assistance.
YouTube doesn't like when you
When
take
I got
other
a glimpse
people's
of the person,
sponsors.
it looked
Oh,
to be an
jeez, it's a
elderly
hermit.
woman with
Oh,
dark
Jesus
black
Christ.
hair. Her face was covered in wrinkles, but it was hard to really make out anything else as she was bundled up pretty tight due to the cold weather. I saw her moving slowly throughout the aisles, not seemingly looking
Damn,
for
she's
anything,
scary
but
looking.
just walking throughout the store. After several minutes of watching her do this, I decided to ask if there was anything I could assist her with. She didn't even bother to look at me or acknowledge that she heard me. She just continued to pace throughout the store.
She looks like a witch.
After another 5 minutes
Her
or so,
eyes
she suddenly stopped
dim.
and stared at the clock that was above the cooler, turned around and scampered out the door and disappeared into the night. To be honest, I didn't really think much of it. I assumed she was homeless and was possibly just trying to get some relief from the cold. We weren't technically supposed to let people loiter in or around the store, but this occurrence seemed pretty harmless to me. The next night, I was sitting behind the counter getting pretty drowsy, wishing the sun would come up so that I could go home and try to get some rest. I was watching a TV show on my iPad around, I think, 4 a.m. when I heard the bell ring. I'm pretty sure I jumped out of my chair as I was not paying attention and dozing in and out of sleep. Startled and trying to regain my composure, I looked at the door to see who had entered, and it was the same woman from the night before. She looked almost exactly the same, except now there seemed to be several scrapes or scratches on her face. I greeted her and asked if there was anything I could help her with. Again, no response, and she began the process of walking up and down the aisles with her head down. I figured I was going to have to wait a minute or two and let her know that if she wasn't planning on buying anything, then she would have to leave the store. Once a few minutes passed and I informed her, she stopped directly where she was standing, stared at me, and said, "The only thing worth bargaining for is your soul." Her voice was high and shrill and not at all what I expected. I responded by saying, "Excuse me?"
Yeah, exactly.
And she didn't say anything else. She just stared at me with a menacing, almost aggressive look. After about 30 seconds, she exited the store and I watched her walk across the parking lot, hoping she wouldn't come back. The final night of my consecutive overnights came all too quickly, and all I could think about was hoping that this crazy woman wouldn't show up again tonight. I never really had anxiety related to this job, so for the first time, I was uneasy about heading into work. I couldn't really focus on anything during my shift other than staring at the door and waiting for customers to enter. I didn't really leave the register, even though I probably could have done some stalking throughout the store. The clock seemed to be moving so slow. It was only 3 a.m., and I felt like I had been there for 12 hours. Shortly after 3 a.m., I heard the bell ring, and there she was, the same woman from the 2 previous nights. She looked even more disheveled, and the cuts on her face had increased and were also noticeable on her hands. Her hands almost seemed red, like they were smeared with blood. I looked over to her and yelled out, "Are you okay? Can I get you some help?" Meanwhile, really only concerned with my own safety. She looked up in my direction and mouthed the words, "Help me," and looked like she started to cry. I told her to hold on and went down to my purse to grab my cell phone to contact someone. I found my cell phone and was getting ready to dial 911, but then I heard the bell go and the door open, and when I looked up, she was gone. I didn't even see her scurry across the parking lot. It was that quick. I decided to call my boss, not knowing what else to do. I had clearly woke him up, but he seemed attentive when I explained what transpired during the previous 3 nights. He decided to come in and talk to me and check the property to see if we could locate her. When he arrived, he decided to go to the back and check the video recordings to see if he could get a visual or
She wasn't on
description
the
of the
cam.
person, in case we decided to contact the authorities that someone had entered our store, clearly in trouble and not in the right mental state. He came back up front about 10 minutes later and had a scowl on his face. "Hand me the phone. I'm calling the cops," he said in a very serious tone. "What?" I asked, startled, slightly worried that she might be back. "Come look at this," he said, leading me back to the surveillance room. He proceeded to rewind the footage that was overlooking the back of the building, near the bathrooms. Upon playing it, I watched as the old woman walked onto screen, facing directly towards the store. Seemingly out of nowhere, her slow demeanor became explosive as she began aggressively thrusting her shoulders into the bricks of the building, falling to her knees and intermittently scratching at her face in the store. She proceeded in this psychotic state for nearly 2 minutes straight before she wandered off screen towards the front of the store and entering towards me. The timing lined up directly with when I remembered seeing her. I was in mild shock, with my hand over my mouth as my boss informed me about experiences he's had with various junkies in the past, explaining that some of them seemed borderline possessed without rhyme or reason for their actions. We ended up reporting the incidents and showing the footage to a few patrolmen, but there wasn't much they could do besides reassuring us that they keep an officer patrolling the area for the next couple
Disclaimer,
evenings.
the horror stories that
The
I
way
watch,
that woman moved still baffles my
just
mind,
don't.
based
If
on the difference
your
when I
mom and
saw
dad
her
don't want you
demeanor when
watching
she
this
walked in.
type of stuff, with
Looking
swears
back,
and stuff,
her ass.
don't watch the video, because there's gonna be some things, words that you're not supposed to hear that your parents probably don't want you hearing. So please, if you're not young enough to watch this, please don't. So that's all for today's video. For all my spies out there, goodbye.